All right, I think we got it. Hey, everybody. How are you this evening? I've got a I've got a little mouse in my right ear over here telling me what to do. Oh, I don't need my notes. I'm actually that's Amber over there. She's the one keeping me straight here. All right, folks, we're gonna pick back up on our series. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, and just want to jump and dive right into it here. I need my arrows. Where are my arrows at?
Not on PowerPoint.
Oh, there we go. I got my arrows back.
Hold on, huh?
That's it. Now I can do it. All right. Sorry, guys. I left the whole step out. We're going to pick back on up with I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. We're finishing up with teleological argument, and we're going to jump into the moral argument. We've been looking at the three um, arguments for the existence of God, and last week we left off at, and we went into actually a question and answer session looking at the argument related to evolution from the chemical side as well as the biological side. And there's two central, I just want to do just a quick recap on that. There's two central arguments for evolution. First one is small adaptations lead to new species. That's micro to macro evolution. Let me, if you get the urge to go any further with this and start studying this and really doing a deep dive with this stuff, uh, remember there is absolutely no evidence for macroevolution. None. If they tell you that, they are not telling you the truth. If it's in a textbook, it's not telling you the truth. I'll give you an example of that, of an old, I don't want to say ancient, but old historical um, chart that's being used today in many cases. In the 90s, they started to let up on using it a little bit. 2000s, it was still being used. 210s is still being used. Up into 215, as far as I could go back, 15 to 18 was still being used in textbooks. Just outright falsities, just straight up, not even true information. So if they're using and teaching kids that there is macroevolution versus microevolution, and there is microevolution, that means little small changes over time, we see that that's there. But going from one species to the next species, chemically, biologically, in the fossil record, doesn't matter, not there. There is no evidence for that. Everything is a guess. Everything is what we believe. Everything is my commitment to something. So that's where we're at with this. But the two central arguments for evolution is small adaptations lead to new species, micro to macro evolution. So that's an argument related to that. And then similarities in structure. This is where we left off last week. It's called homology, and that's where you see a bat has a wing, a man has a hand, a deer has a hoof, and since you see these similar structures in creation, that means we all come from a common ancestor. And that was the big question. Does it mean common ancestor, or does it mean common designer? So we're going to pick back up with that, finish that today, and jump into, it won't take very long. Hopefully you'll do a little more digging in on this, because it does get pretty philosophical when you deal with the moral argument, but we're going to look at the moral argument for the existence of God. Now, let's jump back into similarities in structure, homology, and DNA are evidence of a common ancestor. All right. Does similarity in structure prove that the pot evolved from the teaspoon? No, but what is in common? I think I showed these last week, and again, doing a background here. But what is in common? You know the answer. Someone made it, okay? It's designed. So someone made the spoon all the way up to the pot, but they have a basic similar design. They have handles. Handles might be a little different. They have the ability to hold or contain elements or stuff. And then you see they have the concave design. I think I showed last week Darwinist Tim Barra offered a progression of the Corvette as evidence of descent with modification. He realized it was a blunder. It became known as such, and they had to backtrack on it. But again, what he originally did, he took a 53, 63, 68, 78 Corvette and showed the changes. This actually, what he's done actually points a little bit more to what creationists believe in intelligent design and whatnot, because it shows you see changes, but at each stage, what has had to happen? A mind changed the design at each stage. And it shows that there's this process that's taking place, and intelligence was involved in the process. So now this is just kind of a graphic real quick. I'm going to show you several different graphics, give you a background to one of them here. I mentioned the similarities in structure just a few minutes ago. If you look up on the top of the column, the top of the chart here, on the left-hand side of the column, you see a dog foot, bat wing, you see a seal, fingers or appendages right there, and then a man's hand. Similarity in structure, but doesn't mean common ancestor. See, remember the catchphrase in evolution is we all come from a common ancestor. That means you had the one microorganism that out of chance and time and accident and non-guided process, this thing eventually found life, and from that we all come. That's what common ancestry means. And then there's branches off of this tree that they call the tree. Now, does it mean that you have a common ancestor, or maybe what we see is a common designer? Now, I want to point out something here. If you look down at the bottom of the chart, you're going to see the chart show the phases of embryology. That means from the time that it's the tiny cell to the zygote, all the way until you get to the born individual. And the picture that here, although hand drawn, is showing the shark, the salamander, the chicken, the chimpanzee, the man. And these, quote, similarities have been used to show that we all have descended via evolution from a common ancestor, because even in the embryonic stage, we're all very similar, look alike and whatnot. I can remember being in school, particularly the salamander freaked me out, seeing the pictures. In fact, I'll go ahead and pull it up now. Let me pull it up right now. This is Ernst Haeckel's chart that he used, published in 1866, I believe, was when it was first published. And what he did in his chart, he went on to show how that in the embryonic stage, in the stages of development, how that they all are very similar. They're almost exact when they start out, and eventually you see these tiny changes until you eventually get the fish or the salamander, the chicken, the hog, the pig, the man. Let me show you another picture of this that I found and put up. This is actually from a book that was written by Nick Hopwood. He actually went to Germany. He went to the university where Ernst Haeckel taught at, and did all the research and wrote this particular book. It's called Images, Evolution, and Fraud. Now, why did he name it that? Because it's fraud. Okay? What Ernst Haeckel did was, or Eichel, I think it might be pronounced Eichel, I don't remember. What he did was hand draw these charts in embryonic development, and he fudged them. Now, he didn't just like tighten up a line or make something straight when it was crooked and needed to be straight. No. He changed the embryonic stages. When I say changed, I mean he changed them. He made, say, from the chicken embryo to the hog embryo look very similar or the same. Went from the hog to the man, did the same thing. And over time, in his process of taking the time that he used to draw these out, he made them all look very, very similar. That way it could be taught that in the embryonic stage, we all look the same. We all look very much alike. And I remember as a child, now I'm not 60 yet, but I'm pushing 60. But I can remember being in school and being taught the gill slits in the human embryo are evidence of the fact that we came from a fish. Okay, I remember that in school. What's been found out was that the gill slits actually are not gill slits, but what they are, they're folds that are in the skin. They're there for a purpose and reason. Not going to go into detail. Anyway, go research this out, folks. Had nothing to do with fish and gill slits. In the embryonic stages of development, the chart that Ernst Haeckel did was this. He basically created the evidence to fit the theory, or to fit the notion that this is what he thought evolution would do. He was brought up on charges of fraud by his peers. Particularly one was, I want to say Reitmeyer or Rittenmeyer was one of the guys. He absolutely said, you need to be taken to the woodshed, brother, because of what you've done. His university found him guilty of fudging all of these drawings back in the night when I want to say 96. It may have been 2006 or 2008 or 9. I'm getting my dates mixed up a little bit with what I've read. Robertson, I think the guy's name was. Go do some research on this. He actually did a study on this, found out as well the fudging that Ernst did on this, and how that it was fake, and how that it is still being and has been used in textbooks, folks. What I'm getting to, I said all of that to say this. This is a forgery. It's a fake. It's not true. The stages of development in the embryonic forms are not at all what the chart shows. They're not at all what it looks like. But yet, this is what is in textbooks that are being taught to kids to show that evolution is true. I read where one doctor said that, I believe it was Dr. Jeffrey Thompson, Clemson University, PhD in biochemistry. He's a Christian believer now, and I want to say he said this chart, this is the thing that really got him when he was younger, that really pulled it in for him, to related to, no, God didn't make or create everything. It had to have been, by the process of time, chance, and accident, and hope so, and we just got really lucky, and here we are. This is the thing that pulled him in, and I think he has since pulled away from that. But anyway, it's the chart. What I mean to, folks, there's probably been more people that have been brought to the side of evolution via art or drawings or illustration than the written word. Think about that for a minute. Such as this chart, where you see, and kids see, and pictures and children's books and whatnot, where these pictures are drawn that are absolutely and totally fabricated. It's just a guess. It's just what they think. It's just made up. It's a fairy tale, and yet they create it. Don't believe me? Research it yourself. Don't turn me off and shut me down and say, hey, dude, you're just throwing stuff out there that's not true. No, if you do the research, you'll find it yourself. It is true. It's there. And they just make this stuff up. Now, what happened with this guy, he's continued to teach in the university. Ernst Haeckel continued to teach for 30-some years and whatnot, continued to use, even though he had been taken to the woodshed, continued to use a lot of this propaganda, and it remained in the public textbooks. It may very well be possible, if you have a child in public school right now, if you get one of their biology textbooks or science textbooks, that you're going to see this chart in there right now, to 2021. It may very well be possible. And it's used a lot of times as well when science is taught and biology is taught, when it's totally fabricated. That's the whole reason I brought that up, because the need to hang on to and to use the similarity of structural formation and processes is a must in evolution. It's not found in the fossil record. It's not found anywhere, actually. And they've got to use something. They've got to find something. They need some way to show that there's this change over time from micro to macro evolution. Do the big jump into species. And evolution's having a real tough time. I think every year as we go along scientifically, evolution is just having a rougher and rougher time hanging in there, because folks, we're just seeing too much. It's just too much evidence out there related to special creation, related to whatever you want to call it. Even if you don't say God, even if you don't say intelligent design, it's not by chance and probability. It's not by time. It's not by millions and billions of years on this thing. So let's jump into real quick and look at, what about DNA similarities? What about the fact that DNA, we have what we call cousins or relatives in the DNA line or realm of thought. DNA similarity is about 96% between apes and humans, but also 90% between mice and humans. Now let me point out something. This is one you hear all the time, particularly the chimpanzee. Studies were done, I think they finalized some of them in 2016, 2018. I want to say finalized some studies on the chimpanzee, that it was 98.6 to 99%, or 96.8% to 99% close proximity, relativity to the chimpanzee in our DNA structure. Therefore, it shows that we're related to chimps and it's our closest cousin and whatnot. When you do some research on that, what I have found, it's 85%. It's not so much that those numbers actually, again, I'm not saying it's done on purpose, that anybody's nefarious in doing this, but what I found out was this during the Chimpanzee Genome Project, is that what they did, they began to, they were running out of money. They had to use the human framework in the studies, and thus they did so. Naturally, when you attach a human framework to the chimpanzee studies, it's going to look a lot like human when you're done. So just to do a little bit more research and study on that. Even with the 85% though, let's say you've got 85%, does that mean that the complex ways that DNA is structured, it's very complex with a chimp, very complex with an ape or a human, therefore those complexities kind of bleed over and touch one another, if you please? Not so much. Just because there's similarity, again, even on the molecular cellular level, does not mean that we are per se evolving from that chimp or that ape or whatnot. Again, rice, mice, plants, almonds, there's lots of DNA close proximities that humanity has with these other DNA structures. Now, what I'm getting to is this. Again, what does it sound like? Does it sound like it could be the possibility that we've all evolved from that, or did we have the same designer for specific purposes and functions? DNA similarity could be evidenced of a common designer rather than a common ancestor. Similar structures often have a similar blueprint. We know that. Build a house, build a building, build a car, build certain types of machines. You have your basics. We started out weeks ago with the mousetrap. You have certain basics that have to be a part of that process in order for it to work and whatnot. So doesn't necessarily mean it's common ancestor. It very well could be common designer. Darwinists also, and this is something we don't think about a lot of times, Darwinists must also explain the vast dissimilarity. That means non-similarities between living, okay? You may have something that's very similar in DNA structure, say the A and B are very similar, but wait a minute, A and F over here, or G or H, whatever particular creature that might be or species that might be, they're just off the charts, not even close. So if we look at that, do we say, well, this is showing that there is no such thing as evolution, or that the evolution process is, They're committed to this thing, and the fact that it's going to take a lot of faith to go there and believe that. So look at this. The bee, the octopus, the Venus flytrap. By the way, if you want to, we were talking about complexity. We were talking earlier about um, uh, complexity of the cell and makeup of these structures. That if you drop one or two parts of the complexity, the whole thing doesn't work. It just won't happen. Won't happen. Look at octopus eye. Look at the human eye. By the way, they're very similar to one another. Evolutionists will use that as too. We use that as too as true as well, showing that we could have evolved from the octopus because the eye is so similar and whatnot. It is, but it ain't. If you want to say it that way, okay? Octopus eye being, not too many of us, I think, could go live underwater, and if we could live underwater, we could open our eyes and keep our eyes open underwater. Just go study the octopus eye and the ability to open their eyes underwater. It's just fascinating. But the bee, the octopus, the Venus flytrap, mildew, peacock, porcupine, the human, etc. A lot of dissimilarities there. Does it work the other way? Does it work the opposite direction, if you please? Now let's look at, we talked earlier on this argument as we wrap it up. Naturalistic philosophy disguised as science. We know for certain, let's look, see what what Richard Dawkins says here. Whoa, what happened, Amber? My daughter, I can't, I don't know, I somehow or another, folks, have lost my font. I had white font and it's gone. I don't think you can do anything, Amber. It's not the program. I have no idea what happened here. My font turned black instead of white. Anyway, what I wanted to get out of it and point out is there from what Dawkins says. Just send me a message or I'll bring it up next week. How's that? I'll bring it up next week and let everybody look at it. I got a quote here from Richard Dawkins. We've already talked about him, where Richard Dawkins basically says that he has a belief system, okay? And this is what's on your screen, which you should be seeing right now. My philosophical comment to materialism and reductionism is true. And what he's saying, he's committed. He says, I'm committed to this theory. I'm committed to this process. And because what I believe I know is true, therefore, what I say about this process makes more sense than what anybody else says, basically. But look at the term he used here, my philosophical comment. No, he made a comment, my philosophical commitment. We talked about commitment last week and the week before, I believe. That's why we've titled this, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, because faith is involved in order to believe what you believe as an atheist or an evolutionist or whatnot. You have a commitment to believe a certain thing where there may not be the evidence is there. Just like a believer or a person that believes in intelligent design and whatnot has a commitment and exercise their belief, worldview, their belief system, their faith, if you want to say it that way, which means just to trust, be confident in, to be committed to. That's what, well, when we say faith, our definition of faith. So we've committed to this thing. And this is what he's saying. He has a philosophical commitment to materialism and reductionism, that it is true. Therefore, everything's going to start where? It's going to start right there. When did he write this? He wrote this, I believe it was Philip Johnson. Oops. I'm pretty sure it was Philip Johnson. He was doing an email exchange with Philip Johnson, who is a creationist, and they were talking back and forth, and this is from an email that he sent. Listen to what Einstein said on science and philosophy. Remember, he said, my philosophical commitment is this. He says, the man of science is a poor philosopher. And that was Einstein. We find that to be true. If you've ever read the book, The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins, he beats up philosophy but uses it in his book. That's showing he's not really that great of a philosopher. So science and the two There has to be a great understanding of the definitions of both in order to use them, and understanding that a scientist, again, just because they say something doesn't mean it's always scientific. It may be from their belief system. It may be from their commitment. It may be from their worldview versus science. And you say, well, we know a scientist wearing a lab coat, he's got his glasses on, down at the end of his nose, the really smart guy and the guy in the lab and all that. They wouldn't try to put their own views or own opinion or their own belief system into science, would they? Au contraire, they absolutely would. You see it time and again in their writings, their articles. I've watched video after video where you see. So yes, this is where we have to. And when I say we don't have to be a scientist. We don't have to be a PhD. We don't have to have an MA in something or whatnot in order to be a thinker, in order to read, in order to understand concepts. We don't have to. They may know the intricacies and challenges that are in that, but folks, using common sense and being able to deduce and being able to just come to the end of the line and say, you know what, my stink detector's going up, or you know what, I'm putting my antenna up and my spider senses are going off on this and whatnot. We have the ability to do that. We have the ability to research. If you don't know something, go look it up. If you don't know about that thing, go do a little bit of research about that thing and try to get a concept on what's being said and talked about. And these are the buzzwords, and I'm going to say it again as we get off of this subject here and this topic as we go along. Remember, I can't say it enough. When you read the peer-reviewed articles, when you read the magazines, when you read the books, when you listen to their documentaries, when you listen to, you have to pay attention to the words or the phrases where they say, we believe that. It's our assumption. We think. It is of our opinion. Do you see where I'm coming with this? Do you see what's happening here? They're interjecting now their worldview. They're interjecting now their commitment to believe something, and I'll leave it at that. So hopefully it'll help you think a little bit more about when you're watching that documentary or you're reading that book or whatever it may be. When you're presented with evidence for you to, hey, I can step back and say, true, not true, sound good, doesn't sound good, need to do a little bit more, research in that area, need to think this thing through a little bit. Yeah, step can do that. We are called to be able, I think in humanity, called to be able to use our logic and reason and abilities and not just parrot something because someone has thrown it at us. There was a time when, I went when as a teenager, I said, it's got to be, it's got to be the whole process of natural causes for the world, and I don't see where God is in this because the evidence is showing such. Not so much. I'm not there anymore. I don't hold to that anymore. I don't even lean that direction anymore. It wasn't a big deal, like I told you some time ago. It wasn't a big deal for me when you brought up and think about it in today's culture, when you brought up the issue of abortion. It wasn't a big deal to me because it's no different than baking a cake. You mix the batter, you make another one. In the embryonic stage and embryonic form, all they are is mindless jellyfish, and it's not real life. And you see where I'm going with this? Do you see how this kind of worldview and thought and process and whatnot affects the way an individual thinks about the world and thinks about what they believe and whatnot? So yeah, absolutely, we need to step back and we need to think about these things. And we need to be willing to do these things, especially if we're going to share and talk to some other individuals. Follow the evidence where it leads, and you don't interject your very own belief system into it. And if we don't know, we don't know, right, folks? If there's no clear answer, there's no clear answer. But we're at what's more reasonable. Put it on the scale, weigh it out. What's the thing that we're looking at? All right, let's go to the moral argument. We're going to look at the argument of morality. We've talked about the cosmological argument, the argument of the heavens designed, looking at design, the argument of the design in itself in biology and creation. And we're now looking at, take a few minutes here before we close. Hopefully, I want to whet your appetite to research some of this stuff and get into this stuff, to go a little bit deeper with it, especially when you're maybe talking to a friend or a neighbor and they're inclined to believe one way or another, maybe never thought about these things, but you have the ability to be able to share with them about some of this. The moral argument. What is the moral argument stating? The moral argument is going to help answer the question, who's right, who's wrong? Now, let's backtrack just a few minutes here. If you jump into the worldview that we are all here by chance, millions and billions of years, it's all by accident, we just got really lucky, and all we are today anyway is chemical reactions. The thing that I've used, you've heard me, I think, the past several weeks has been this. If all we are is a meat machine, that means we have to ask the question, what about the parts of our nature, our character, characteristics, our abilities that are not meat related? Okay? When I say use your brain, what does that mean? Does that mean, okay, I'm working with my son outside and he says, Dad, what about this over here? And I got to get this screw at this angle over here. And I were to say, okay, son, step back, take a minute, use your brain. I didn't tell him to open up his head, take his brain out, and use his brain in there to screw the screw into the wood. When I said use your brain, what am I saying? I think we all know the answer to this, right? We're saying use your mind. Okay? You don't see the mind, you don't touch the mind, you don't taste the mind, but is the mind there? Do we have one, what we call a mind? Is it there? Is it usable? Do we have the ability to know that we have a mind? So we have a mind that shows us the ability or relates to us the ability to the fact that we have a mind. Absolutely, we do. We have a mind. So we say use your mind. This is like, or let me ask this question. Do you think that a can of Coke, that is nothing but chemical reaction, is just chemical reaction taking place in the can? Does a can of Coke have the ability to reason, to use logic, to think, and have a mind? If all it is chemical processes, no, it doesn't. Okay, if we are only chemical processes, but we have the ability to use logic, have reason, use our minds, think, have character, well, where did that come from? How do we know right from wrong? This is where the moral argument comes into play. I know it's a little heady, it's a little heavy, but this is where it comes into play. How do we know right from wrong? How do we know when we look at the extermination of 6 million plus Jews during World War II by Hitler? How do we know when you see pictures like this and say that's wrong? Because, folks, if all we are is a can of Coke and chemical reaction, chemical processes, a meat machine, that's not wrong. How do we know it's wrong? What put it there? What planted it there? How did we get it? Well, we can say, well, culture gave it to us. Well, that may be the culture you're in right now. What about the other cultures that don't have your culture, but they have their culture over there? Okay? And they're just creating destruction, mayhem, havoc, death. And do you see where I'm going with this? Now, this culture over here that's maybe more refined can't look at this culture over here and say they're wrong and we're right. Or this one over here say we're wrong, they're right. We can't do that. One person's opinion is just as good as the other person's opinion. If all we are is chemical reaction, if all we are is a chemical process. So how do we know right from wrong? How do you discover who's right, who's wrong? We touched a little bit on this at the very beginning when we talked about truth. What is truth? And how do we discover this? How do we know? How do you determine this one from that one, and where that measurement is? And for those of you that were here first couple weeks, some of this might be a little bit of a repetitive nature to you, but just hang on with me. Okay, look on the screen now. You're going to see maps of Scotland. On the left, you have map A. On the right, you have map B. How do we know which one of these maps of Scotland are correct? I will pause to give you a minute to use your mind, logic, reason, understanding. Think about this. Map A, map B, which one is correct? Man, I wish I was doing a live teaching right now, because I'd have everybody buzzing right now. Hopefully get you involved on this real quick. How do we know? Any answers? Yes, you in the back on the left. I'm just kidding. Okay, how do we know? There has to be a what? There has to be a rule, a standard, a measurement. What would that be? We have to have a map of the real Scotland. When we have the map of the real Scotland, then we're going to be able to discover if map A or map B is correct. One or both, or neither. See where I'm getting with this? So what is the rule? What is the laying down of that measurement of right and wrong, knowing to do good, knowing not to do good, knowing evil, knowing good, knowing righteousness, knowing unrighteousness, however you want to phrase it and term it. So the real unchanging Scotland, map A, map B, need the real deal to find out what the false is, or find out what truth is, okay? In understanding that. So God's unchanging moral nature. If we have morality, this is the question. If we have morality, where did that morality come from? How did we get it? What's the standard? What's the measurement? If there's no objective morality, now the word objective just means truthful, okay? If there's no such thing as truthful morality, that's saying, what you do is just as good as what I don't do, or I do, and doesn't matter either way, we just believe what we believe. Number one, the Nazis were wrong by killing innocent individuals because of their race, their color, because of their religion, because of their handicaps, because of, you see where I'm going with this? That determination of it being wrong comes from, how do we know that's wrong? How does the average, how does humanity, when they saw these pictures come out of these camps? And see, there was a time, if you study history, folks, which I have, I'm a World War II buff to some degree anyway. I really love studying it. There were rumors that were running around a long time about these camps. There were rumors that hey, there's something really, really nefarious going on over there or at these camps. And the word got out, but because of the propaganda of the government and whatnot, they were squashing it, they were quelling it, they were saying no, these are no different than summer camps. These are people we've taken out and we've just placed them there, we've given them new homes, and we're taking care of them, they're fine, they're being, you see how that goes. That's the way that thing worked out. Well, when the pictures came out, people stepped back. There were people that broke down. Absolutely, there were Germans in the streets in Germany that broke down, literally went into a meltdown, because they were saying, it was right here at our doorstep. We let it happen. We heard the rumors. We we saw the evidences of these things going on, and we just didn't step up, or we just believed the lie that it wasn't taking place. But they knew, immediately they knew, even after, quote, them being during this time under Hitler's rule and reign, being brainwashed, where they stepped back and they said, this is wrong, this was evil, this was about as wicked as you can get with this thing. And so they weren't wrong. If we come from natural processes, we're meat machines, and all we are is a chemical reaction. Love is no better than rape. Okay? Again, fill in the blank with that. Meat machine, chemical reaction, unguided, accidental creation is all we are. And we're here by chance. We're here by happenstance. If that's true, love is no better than, because the person that loves cannot tell the person that rapes that they're any better or any worse than they are. Where do we find that standard? Where do we get that moral for? Where do we get that judgment? Where's it come from? That's the big question that I'm asking. Freedom is no better than slavery. You can't say one's bad and the other is good. Tolerance is no better than intolerance. Again, same concept. How about this? Number 5, religious crusades were not wrong. Which, by the way, I believe that religious crusades were wrong. The ones that did take place and did happen, just as wrong as anything else. But you can't say they're wrong if we believe in natural evolution processes, and we are no different than, the worm in the earth that can't reason and logic and think like we do. Can't complain about the problem of evil. That's a big one, because the number one element, and we'll probably get into some of this as we go along. I might even take a couple of weeks just to go off to the side with that one, outside of this session, or this series, should I say, and dealing with the problem of suffering and pain and evil. This is the number one question that's out there. If there's a good, loving God, why is there evil? Why is there suffering? Why is there pain? If that's true, or we believe in God, should I say? But it's a moot point anyway. If you're a naturalist and materialist, that's a moot point. Question doesn't mean anything. Why even bring it up? It's actually a silly question, because don't complain about the problem of evil, because there's no such thing as evil. For you to bring it up, what you're saying is that you're using something to judge your question by. For you to even say, why is there evil and suffering in the world? You're saying, since I'm saying there's evil and suffering in the world, I know there's got to be some good in the world too. Now we're getting somewhere, huh? Evil requires good. Good requires God. As an atheist, this was C.S. Lewis. As an atheist, my argument against God was that the universe seems so cruel and unjust. But how had I got this idea of just and unjust? A man does not call, and I love this day, I just comment all the time. A man does not call a line crooked unless he has some idea of a straight line. What was I comparing this universe with when I called it unjust? Boy, do you think the worldwide view of worldviews just opened up to C.S. Lewis when he asked that question, when that just came to him, when he goes, I'm looking at everything and saying, this is wrong, unjust, bad, unrighteous, whatever you want to call it. And then he goes, well, wait a minute. I'm calling this unjust, but I've got to know what just is, or what justice is, before I look at this injustice over here, or unjust, or evil, or suffering. For that to be evil, I've got to know what good is. And this is the illustration he used. He said, a man does not call a line crooked unless he has some idea of what a straight line is. Isn't that awesome? That's amazing. So we're going to wrap this up. We are not saying atheists can't be moral. They can. They absolutely can and are. Okay? Atheists don't know morality. They do. We are saying an atheist cannot justify morality. They can theorize about how we know murder is wrong, but atheism provides, here we go, no immaterial objective standard that establishes why murder is wrong. Everyone here, I'm pretty sure, would say just to kill innocent people, innocent children, babies, whatnot, is wrong, right? We would say that. Question is why? Why would we say that? Why would we even go there? All right, folks, I think I'm going to wrap it up with that tonight. Again, if you have any questions, comments, want to get in touch with us, just use in the description box below. Just use the information there to email us or make a comment, and we'll get back to you as soon as we possibly can. We appreciate so much everybody's involvement thus far, comment, questions, and what we've been looking at. Thank you so very, very much. You guys have been wonderful. Thank you. I mentioned last week. Thank you again, those that have contacted us. On the most part, 99% has been, very courteous, not trying to pick a fight, not trying to get ugly, and just saying, hey, you're just stupid, and why are you, saying it this way or doing it this way? Thank you very much. Now, the reason I said that is, number one, if you do troll, we're not going to deal with your trolling. Number two, if you're sincere about your comments or questions, we want to be concerned with that as well. And number three, again, I'm not a scientist, and I stated at the very front. I'm just a guy that loves God, loves the Word. By the way, have you noticed yet, folks? We haven't been doing any Bible studies on any of this. That's on purpose. Okay, that's on purpose. You don't need Bible studies right now to get a person that says, I'm a non-believer or I'm an atheist and I don't believe there's a God. You don't need to go into a Bible study to point them in the right direction or to get them to the place, to ask some questions, to get them thinking about these things at least. Okay, and so what I'm saying is, I'm just a thinker. I'm a pastor, and I'm just a thinker, and as such, want to know some answers, maybe want to give some questions and whatnot, and we appreciate the same thing from you. So thank you for being very, very courteous in doing that in your responses to us. And if you can teach me something, great. If I can teach you something, great too. All right, guys. Again, we will see you next week, Sunday evening, 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time for this particular session. Have a great day. If you want to join us for church, we do church on Sunday mornings, 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So thank you. God bless you. Have a wonderful day, and we'll pick up next week.